these are the masses, right? This is the mid curve. These are the average people, and average people will do average things. They'll have average memory spans. They'll have average attention spans. I mean, people were panicking like crazy about oil and Hormuz, and now it's like, yeah, well, go ask someone, like, what's happening now? They won't know because it's not being fed to them in the media anymore or through the algo. So, people will find Bitcoin when they deserve to find Bitcoin at the price that Bitcoin is at that time. But it's difficult to force change and to force understanding. You have to really have been burned or be very cognizant of the world to really understand things ahead of time.
Bitcoin's 4-year cycle is broken. That's the bold warning from Samson Mow, who believes investors are looking in the wrong direction. While many wait for history to repeat, Mow argues that Bitcoin has already entered uncharted territory, driven by nation-state adoption, AI-fueled infrastructure, and a growing realization that fiat systems are running out of options. His message is clear. The next phase of Bitcoin won't look anything like the last.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
I don't really believe in cycles. I think they're all just a coincidence. It looked a certain way for a 4-year period, and then it just happened to play out similarly in a few more. But I believe the cycle theory has been broken largely because we hit an all-time high before the halving, and that's never happened before. So everything that's happening now has never really been, there's no direct parallel to prior times. But I understand, like, people are frustrated right now because it feels like we're going sideways and nothing's happening. And I think that has to do with a few reasons, one of which is it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. People do believe in 4-year cycles, and they're thinking, well, we're going to hit a low end of this year in November or something like that to match prior cycles. But if it was that easy, everyone would be a trillionaire by now. And that's just not how things work. The other thing that I believe is impacting price is really just the rotation into capital right now in preparation of a few big IPOs this summer. SpaceX, and then a few other ones like Anthropic, I believe, and maybe a few more. But I think people are trying to prepare. Maybe they're hedging against Bitcoin going down, which I don't think it will, and they're going out to cash or stables, and they want to buy the IPOs, which I don't think is a good idea, because everyone that got in at a good price has already gotten in, and you're kind of exit liquidity. So, the people that don't believe in Bitcoin are probably going to be punished for not believing in Bitcoin, I believe. Inefficiencies right now and bottlenecks with scaling AI inference, and I think that plays into some of the hype. Like, it appears there is more demand and more need than the underlying actually can support. And that is true for now, but these bottlenecks will remove themselves over time. And, as Jeff writes in his book, Price of Tomorrow, technology is deflationary. And I don't feel like the people that are really excited about these things are fully understanding that. I think a lot of Bitcoiners that are dabbling in AI, I'm one of them, there's Brad Mills, there's a whole bunch of us.
Yeah.
We are seeing that because we value privacy, we're all focused on how you can do local inference on your own devices. And the technology is definitely getting to a point. It's being optimized. You can run an LLM on your MacBook at a pretty decent rate of tokens per second. And that's only getting better. And I don't feel like there's been a lot of optimization. It's always been offloading the efficiencies and improvements onto raw hardware and energy consumption, which is really not the way to go. So if you think like you're investing in these AI companies and the thesis is they're going to keep on expanding power consumption, energy consumption, and building data centers in space and all that to meet this demand, I don't think that's the right direction. I think you're going to see a lot of optimization, and you're going to see a lot of oversupply come out at the end. And what's going to absorb that oversupply? surprise, it's Bitcoin mining because it can. And that's the way it's always been. We just absorb the excess, we absorb the oversupply. And the interesting horse in this race right now, I think, is SpaceX, because they actually have Bitcoin on balance sheet, right? So it's like they're well positioned to weather this, more well positioned than I would say the other ones like OpenAI and Anthropic, which are just kind of pure play betting on this non-stop expansion, and they don't have Bitcoin. But again, it all interplays at a very subtle level. I think eventually some of these companies will start to allocate to Bitcoin just to hedge, right? You can grow, but if you're growing and you're keeping your money in fiat as a melting ice cube, then that's not really getting you anywhere. Same story with Nvidia. They're making a lot of money, but they're still storing it in a defective medium. It might feel sometimes like we're losing people, like some prominent person says something, but the actual people building and sticking to Bitcoin, it seems pretty stable to me. And it feels like we're actually getting more and more builders, and we're able to accelerate a lot of our development through the use of AI tools too. So I believe it's actually going to get better and better as we all integrate AI technologies into our workflows, because we can build faster and there's more of us building, and the barrier to building is actually lower too. So if you have the people with the right ideology, then you're going to have a massive workforce that is going to make Bitcoin better and integrate Bitcoin into the mainstream economy better. Well, nation states are really challenging, and that's something we've been learning firsthand for the last few years. We can get meetings, but to get the understanding of Bitcoin through and to find the right timing to do so, where a government is conducive to and able to execute, is a very challenging thing. So we're always we're working on projects with governments, but it's really slow to get it out the door. And the biggest barrier, I think, is they seem to not really understand the gravity of the situation and the urgency to implement a strategy. And that's just because everyone is busy with everything else. It's a direct parallel to your ordinary person. Like if you choose your neighbor, one of your neighbors, and you try to orange peel them, that's kind of like what it's like for us. They have their life, they have their their work, they have their hobbies, and where do you fit Bitcoin in? Between which Netflix show do you fit Bitcoin? So that's the challenge.
Perhaps Mow's most important argument centers on sovereign debt. He believes many governments are effectively bankrupt when viewed through a long-term lens. Debt levels continue rising while monetary debasement erodes purchasing power. Traditional solutions are becoming increasingly ineffective. In his view, Bitcoin offers a viable path forward. He believes governments, particularly the United States, may eventually recognize that Bitcoin provides a mechanism to strengthen balance sheets, preserve value, and restore monetary credibility. The challenge is political. Purchasing Bitcoin creates immediate scrutiny. If prices decline after acquisition, critics attack. Politicians often prioritize short-term approval over long-term strategy. Nevertheless, Mow believes reality will eventually force policymakers toward Bitcoin. The debt problem continues growing. The available alternatives continue shrinking. Eventually, economic necessity may overcome political hesitation.
They will get it eventually, but it's sort of, we've been talking a lot about AI. It's sort of the same thing. When AI is hot and everyone wants in, then it's a very viable topic. You bring up AI and people will listen, because everyone wants the AI companies to go there or set up a data center or something there. And it'll be the same for Bitcoin, but I think it'll be when we hit 200, 300,000. That's when the countries are going to perk up and go, hey, well, actually, we're interested in this now, right? It's like all of the memes, they're all true. Like the meme of like the little comic about the two booths, and like Bitcoin at 70K, no one is there, but at Bitcoin at 120, there's a long line up there, right? It's exactly the same. It's like a fundamental truth that people want something when it's hot, but not when it's an understated, underhyped thesis. And that's just the way the world works, it seems. The other counterforce, I feel like it's the difficulty to adopt Bitcoin. So I was in the UK. I was visiting Parliament. I was visiting one of the MPs there, and we sat down to a session. And some of the other MPs on the floor were discussing inflation, and they're saying, people in my district, they're suffering, and inflation's out of control. And I wanted to just shout and say, well, guess what? You could implement a Bitcoin strategy, but to do that is actually very difficult. It's like, Nathan, take your neighbor as an example. Let's say they're complaining about inflation and the cost of living. Your answer is going to be you should cut your spending, save in Bitcoin, and you'll get a reward later. But that doesn't really solve their problem. They want immediate gratification and immediate solutions. And that's the direct parallel again to the nation state, which is the nation states are mostly in debt, right? There might be one or two, they're not, but every country is basically broke, if you look at it that way. And what is the solution? How do you get Bitcoin? This is why the US is trying to frame it as budget neutral, right? They want to acquire Bitcoin without spending money because it's not palatable to the population to say, we're going to invest in this thing, because that they're going to get blasted for it by opposition, by media, by the haters, the no-coiners, the Financial Times, all those, the usual suspects, because it is a choice that is a weakness, especially if Bitcoin goes down post-purchase. And not every government politician is able to weather that, because it's difficult to weather that. Your job basically depends on other people approving of you, and people don't approve of number go down. So you can see how challenging it is. It's layers upon layers of challenges, but I think when it's time, it'll just happen. And that's why I really subscribe to that gradually then suddenly thesis. New example, like some person in, I think, Vancouver was sitting in a cafe, and he was evaluated by a psychiatrist just looking at him, and apparently they deemed him to be mentally unstable, and they can just arrest him for that now. So if you look at the parallels between the Matrix and in real life, it's not that far away. That psychiatrist is like an agent. They can just find you and summarily execute you almost, or lock you up for, if it's a lighter sentence, right? But the world we're in right now is very precarious. It's almost like we're teetering on the edge of this, dystopia. It's already dystopian, but even more so, and more blatantly dystopian. Nathan, you had some questions about, which country is next and whatnot, but this is kind of why I think there is a high chance that the US really does follow through with its plans to really fill their SPR, to pass legislation that allows them to shift onto a Bitcoin standard, because there really is nowhere else to go, right? Like in Canada, the concern of the government and some people is like, we're losing people to the US. But if you're in the US, like Jeff, where else do you go? There's eventually nowhere else to flee to. And I think it is part of the freedom is still part of the American psyche. And I think deep down they realize they need to fix the problem. They need to fix the debt problem. They need to fix the economic ruin, and there's just no way around it other than Bitcoin. So I think maybe things will circle around a little bit, but eventually they have to reach that conclusion about adopting Bitcoin in a serious manner, using Bitcoin as money, and rebasing to sats or something to eliminate the debt, or at least significantly reduce the debt, because there's really nowhere to flee to, right? There's nowhere else to run to. I think people will also learn that stablecoins are not permissionless. They're permissionless for a time, but as that whole ecosystem matures, eventually you'll wind up again right where you started, and it'll be highly permissioned. So I think it's still a net positive, because when you're transacting in stables, you are learning that mechanism of how a free-flowing digital money could work. And kind of that's our hope with Aqua, that you put the stable coins there, you put Bitcoin there, and maybe they're using it for stable coins. Maybe they're in Latin America and Brazil, Argentina, they need it. And somehow they trip over the wire and they land in Bitcoin zone, and then they understand Bitcoin too. So Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I'm not too worried about it. I think some Bitcoiners are, but I think it's a natural evolution. Similar to our nation state work, we get some criticism from Bitcoiners saying, why are you helping governments try to get Bitcoin, right? But anything that is valuable, a government will want. If it's not Bitcoin, it would be bottle caps, right? If it wasn't bottle caps, it'd be something else, because governments don't really create value, they extract value. And I think there's going to be these structures no matter what we do. There's going to be ETFs no matter what we do. But I think, people will have to learn, some people will learn the hard way that if you use it in this centralized system, it's not really yours. And you can keep it as a bearer instrument. And all of us, all the builders, we are building things that will make it easier and easier for them to keep it bearer. But like Jeff is saying, if things get bad, people will learn. Sadly, people have very short memories. I think if you ask a Canadian on the street, remember the trucker protests and freezing bank accounts? I bet you they've forgotten. These are the masses, right? This is the mid curve. These are the average people. And average people will do average things. They'll have average memory spans. They'll have average attention spans. I mean, people were panicking like crazy about oil and Hormuz. And now it's like, go ask someone, like, what's happening now? They won't know because it's not being fed to them in the media anymore or through the algo. So, people will find Bitcoin when they deserve to find Bitcoin at the price that Bitcoin is at that time. But it's difficult to force change and to force understanding. You have to really have been burned or be very cognizant of the world to really understand things ahead of time.
Mow also discusses stablecoins and their role in Bitcoin adoption. While he acknowledges their usefulness, he warns that stablecoins are not truly permissionless. As regulations increase, stablecoin ecosystems may become increasingly centralized and controlled. However, he still sees value in them. Stablecoins teach people how digital money works. They introduce users to self-custody, digital wallets, and global transactions. For many individuals, stablecoins may become the gateway that eventually leads them to Bitcoin. In this sense, stablecoins serve as an educational bridge rather than a final destination.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.